We are back. Yes, recording live from multiple locations within Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Welcome to the Restoration Group podcast, where we are often silly but always serious about investing in Oklahoma City owners and leaders who desire to integrate their Christian faith into the business. I am your host, Clay Steves, and today, we've got a guest episode today with a dear friend, my guest, Blair Humphreys. Blair is the CEO of Humphreys Capital, and in this role oversees investments, accounting, operations, and serves on the investment committee. He brings 16 years of experience in real estate investing and development. Blair also serves as the president of the Wheeler District in the infill urban neighborhood. I have read that term like 3 times recently, and I don't know what it means. So at some point, you're going to have to teach me that. An infill urban neighborhood on the Oklahoma River near downtown Oklahoma City. Blair earned a master's of city planning and urban design from MIT in 2009, but we're not going to do any ages around here, and a Bachelor of Business Administration, a BBA in Entrepreneurship from OU in 2005. He and his wife, Maggie, have 4 children and live here in Oklahoma City. My brother, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Clay, good morning. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Infill, what was it? Infill urban neighborhood.
Yeah,
Give me a quick definition on that. What does that mean?
Well, urban neighborhood, of course, I think probably just means some combination of density and mixed use and housing and commercial and office. The infill piece means that it's going back into a part of the city that had been inhabited or developed before. In this case, we're redeveloping a former airport on the banks of the Oklahoma River. So, if you haven't checked out Wheeler District, it's burgeoning. It's still small, but it's on its way. I'd say every month brings more to see, but also we always have more to come. So anyway, it's fun.
That was a good little tease. I like it. So tell me about your businesses. You can share more about Wheeler, but also tell us about Humphreys Capital. Tell us about
Humphreys Capital is a fund management platform. So we focus on real estate investment. We have a series of funds. Probably the flagship fund is the one most people would know. It's a Humphreys Real Estate Income Fund, and it's a REIT-based investment product. People entrust us with dollars to steward for them. We invest that into real estate and set it up in a way to where they get a monthly distribution, so they can budget and plan their estate or their retirement or their investment portfolio.
Yeah. And then maybe even share a little bit more about your timeline there. I know I said the years, but tell me about when you started.
I'm a OU grad. Had the privilege of getting to go be a Sooner and watch some good football back in the early 2000s, and really, the truth is when it came time to apply for colleges, there's only one. I only applied to one university.
That was good. They're going to use that plug right there. That was good alignment. Well done.
I don't know. The Sooners hype led them to a national championship my senior year in high school, and just to give you a little sense of what my priorities were in life is, I thought, if they're going to keep winning football games, then that's enough for me. So I applied to one school, went and had a great time at OU, met an incredible woman, Maggie. And so I would say that was certainly the best thing that happened to me there, and really one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And then got out with an entrepreneurship degree and started initially working with family and real estate. Had just worked on a campaign that my dad was running. My dad's been involved in politics. And after a year working, I had, the first sense of reality setting in. I was like, man, I do not like what I'm doing. I was working on a warehouse development, and I was like, this is not fun. And there's a whole story there, but basically, my dad and I started talking through it. He's like, hey, he had all these kinds of encouraging things to say. You're a talented guy. You're really capable. You can do all kinds of things. You just do not seem passionate about what you're doing right now. And and that led to a series of decisions. I went down to this place called Ames Aptitude Testing, and got tested. And and after a day and a half of testing, I sit down with this guy. He looked like Dumbledore. He was like this huge wizard-like guy with a flowing beard, and he's like cracking his knuckles across the desk. And he says, "Mr. Humphreys, what is it that you like to do?" And which I thought was such a confusing question after being tested for a day and a half. I was like, I really thought that the purpose of this was that you were going to tell me what I like to do. And he goes, no, 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 no. What are you interested in? And so I started to tell him about the things I'd read. And I was really into these urban planning books. Like, it started with Jane Jacobs, Death and Life of Great American Cities. And then it moved on to, I was getting deep in the weeds of this subject. I was like learning how to design streets in my free time and stuff. And so that led to this new direction: go study city planning and urban design. And I did an internship with the city planning department. Ended up heading off to Boston with Maggie, where I got to study city planning and urban design at MIT. And really wasn't sure where that would all lead, but eventually it brought me back to Oklahoma as a professor at OU, and had an opportunity to lead this outreach institute called the Institute for Quality Communities, and did that for a number of years, and then somehow circled back and ended up back working with family in real estate, but this time I love it. So who knows? It's crazy.
Blair, that was like a 3-minute synopsis, but the evolution of forward movement, of conversation with family, of activating, I would say forward movement, like activation with optimization. And that's optimizations maybe that's the wrong word, like 1 degree tweaking, 1 degree change, seriously. Kind of a thing, like almost like rowing the boat out, leaving one side of the lake, knowing you have to get to the other, not worrying exactly about the perfect direction, but continuing to row that way and keep tweaking the boat is what I hear you articulate. And that was a very short spin.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of crammed that in there, but I guess
that was good.
The wild part's this. The wild part is that, and it, just to show you the way that life and God can work. But in 2006, I was working in real estate with my dad and really with my brother too, and hated it. And in 2014, got invited back into a role to work in real estate with my dad and ultimately with my brother, and I love it. And but in between there was a pathway to focused learning, expertise, confidence building, and really, I think, carving a path that gave me an independence and a confidence that, hey, I'm here because I want to be here, not because I don't have other options. So it was really life-giving, and I'm grateful for it. So yeah, it's a cool deal. I've now Ames aptitude test. I kind of attributed magic status. Maybe that's why I call that guy the wizard.
Is that because he was Dumbledore?
Maybe it's because of Dumbledore. But I've sent a number of people there. I think some people it's been a positive thing. For others, it's been just another thing. But it's kind of cool how sometimes it all lines up.
It is cool how it all, like, cause and effect, each little piece along the path. Okay, each little piece on the path. So I want to use that maybe even lesson that you're talking about there and transition it. So recently I took my now 15-year-old to get his hair cut, and Blair just happened to be at the same place at the same time, ironically. And so it actually ended up just being a wonderful half an hour hanging out in a barbershop. Like, when people talk about a barbershop, I was like, oh, this is that experience. Yeah. This is cool. It was a true barbershop. I was like, this is actually really cool. And in the conversation, I was, of course, you and I had connected, but you were having a conversation with your barber, and it was the most like natural phrase you said. And I don't even remember what you guys were talking about. Okay. I legitimately don't remember the subject, Blair, but you just like said, yeah, and I'm a Jesus guy. And then you just kept on moving into whatever, like, I'm going to say practical, like tactical, real business, life, family conversation you were having. But there was this lens that you put into the dialogue just in one sentence. Okay. Like, and it was like just a real clear, It's like there was clarity, but it was not like punching anybody. It was not overt. It's like it was just this clarity to why maybe some of the other dialogue that was about to come out of you. In addition, listeners and viewers, one of the things we do when we have a guest on, we prompt them like, hey, are there any prompts or stories that you want us to ask? And Blair, you shared you can only restore something that is damaged or broken.
Yeah,
like that was your prompt.
well, yeah,
When we asked.
playing off the title of your podcast, of course, the restoration group. It's like, yeah, I mean, if you think about restoration, that's not a new build, man. That's going in and cleaning up something that's already had some life behind it. So, yeah, I was, in kind of processing through this. Anyone that knows me, so people that know of me tend to have a higher opinion than people who actually know me, at least in terms of what my life looks like on paper. And the reality, the reality is I've done a pretty good job of testing the limits of an otherwise just ideal foundation for a life. So I had great parents. They're still married. They still love each other. I grew up in the church. I mean, we went to church a lot, and it was, and the reality, it was a good church. It was a good church. It had good people. Um, you know, I can't remember a single instance where anyone at that church ever did something that was, untoward or messed up to me. And yet, for whatever reason, I took all this beautiful base of a childhood and still felt the need to go find out what the world had to offer. And so it's really kind of a prodigal story. And if you think about the prodigal, he came from a great family, obviously. Eventually ended up in the pig trough, and then went back to his father. And I think there's a couple cool things that come out there. One is that he figured it out. One is that he had to go find the world, but he figured out that he had something that he needed to return to. Two, and I really think this is the heart of the father, he didn't have to say the right thing. So he never had to get back to his dad's house and apologize or make amends. In fact, it says that when the father saw him out in the distance, he ran to him. And so that's been my experience in life. One of the things that the Bible doesn't really detail that I've had to ask the question on is, would the father have kept running to him if he ran back to the pig trough and then back to the house and back to the pig trough? Because I think sometimes that's kind of was my early experience in my 20s. But yeah, I'm 40 now. I got 4 kids. If you're trying to figure out if you're an adult, then when you have 4 kids, you kind of have to decide, like, I must be there. And but I'm still figuring it out, and also trying to teach along the way. And man, it's quite the journey. So,
well, thank you for going through the journey you have to even be able to share that. Because to be, I think, objective, and like for all of our listeners, like just be aware of the way you're able to share it now isn't step one of a process.
yeah,
Like it's a long, right? Even if we talk about, like, let's parallel it with infill urban developments, as I'm now learning a term.
yeah, there
Let's
you go.
parallel it with restoring things like legitimately, those are long, because sometimes there's breaking down to even rebuild back up. Sometimes there's like a thoughtfulness process that takes a long time of reflection to understand all the factors that led to the situation being, or the personal situation being where it is. I just think and you're at a place now where you can share that.
Yeah.
And even where it's, I'm going to say natural, maybe you were intentional, maybe it was natural. I don't know. I'm not inside you there.
No,
but
yeah, I mean, truth is, and we can go deeper, like, because a lot of times people will say, like, what does that look like in reality?
Yes.
Okay, what does that
Yeah.
look like? Like, so, I mean, life behind the curtain for most people is not clean. And that's certainly the case for me. And so this weird sense of, or this weird reality of, where you have like major life regrets, right? And so major life regrets for me fall into categories of like real specific and embarrassing, which today is not the day we're going to go there, right? But they also are thematic, and usually the thematic ones are participating in activities and really sin that ultimately builds patterns that you look down and realize, like, oh no, like I've become something I didn't want to be. And for me, that ended up through my teens and 20s to where in my 30s, I found myself in a 12-step program. So did Celebrate Recovery. Um,
Yeah.
I'm an overachiever, so I took 2 laps and enjoyed both of them. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so,
Mm-hmm.
and the truth is that 12-step circle is something that I found to be one of the most life-giving versions of the gospel that I had ever experienced.
Mm.
Um, and it gave me just a comfort to connect with people's brokenness because
Come on.
yeah, it resonates with me. It's something that certainly is kind of core to what my life experience has been. So that's what being a prodigal has looked like in my life. Um, I noticed as a kid and still continue to notice that the majority of people that we let give their testimonies tell a story of absolute victory, right? Um, and so, and it's pretty cool. It's like, hey, I was this, I was in the ditch, I saw a light, I crawled out, I stood up, and I've been running towards God ever since, and I've never looked back. And I'm sure for some of them that's exactly the case, and that's awesome. Um,
Mm.
my story is not like that, and so I've always wondered if I'm ever given the opportunity to give my testimony in front of the church, what is it? Do they still clap if you're like, and it's we're still working on it, It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you get
Yeah.
to the end and you're like, and God and I have this thing where I love him and I know he's the answer and I know he's the truth, and yet I still look back on some days and I can't figure out why I'm not good at this. And so that's really my testimony is I'm still a work in progress. So
I don't know if the people in the church clap, but I think my perspective and opinion is God and Jesus doing that spot, man. Because
yeah,
I think that's the curiosity and that's the posture and that's the heart of like courageous authenticity to share it and be like, yeah, and I'm still a train wreck right now. I'm
yeah,
still the debtor of 1,000,
yeah,
and I'm still like, I know I have life, and I do, and there are moments that I get it right, and there's moments that I maybe more than I wish there were that I absolutely miss it, and getting to a place that like, in either way, I'm still chosen.
that's right, dude.
Either way,
Mind
like
blowing.
like come on.
Yeah,
And I think that's the grace, right? That's the grace and gospel, and it's not a future thing, it is a now thing. Like we have it right now, and yet that experience is a fascinating one. Thanks for sharing all that, Blair.
yeah.
Thanks, man.
So yeah, so that's the deal.
Okay,
What else? What we
so
got?
we'll do well,
Let's talk about
let's
urban
do this.
development.
No, well, let's do this. Let's think like, again, remember Restoration Group, right? We invest in Oklahoma City leaders who desire to integrate their Christian faith into their business. So let's make that shift, because you shared some of your own story, some of the restoration element, some of the, let's say, the like progressive aspect of it. And I
Yep.
don't mean progressive in theology. I mean progressive like it's a journey. We're not arriving. You continue to less of us, more of him. But talk about how that, and again, not just like, oh, I'm going to have that life and then I'm going to go to work and I'm going to try to be that person, but how does that actually begin to influence? I would use the word integrate,
Yeah.
because you do have influence. You know that in your roles at Humphreys Cap, in your role at Wheeler, in your role in Oklahoma City, in your role with your family, like you do have influence. How do you integrate it specifically on the work side? So on the
Yeah.
business side,
Let's
how do you
we'll
begin to do that?
talk about some of the different. We'll talk about some of the different lenses. So I mean, I think the first lens where um, faith has an opportunity for imprint is just through people, is through relationship,
Mm,
and you know, at at Humphreys Capital, we have a team of 25. Wheeler District, we have, uh, you know, a kind of core team of a few, and then we have another couple dozen employees that help us out with Ferris wheel and staffing and some other things. Um, and I think the challenge is um, how do you expect more of people so that they grow towards something, but do that in a way where they still feel like it's not the task that matters.
mm,
but that there's this combination where they're valued and the mission's valued, and that
Come
those are
on.
things that can go together. Um, I would say that, you know, that looks different for each person, and maybe
Yeah.
that's the point.
Oh, that's good.
Um, and and so I have, um, I, to be totally candid, I felt like I could do it really well when I got a lot of direct one-on-one FaceTime with somebody. So when I was in a position to directly manage or directly mentor, um, that was like that came pretty naturally as our businesses scaled. Um, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to have that same imprint on every person. And so then you're really trying to create a combination of cultural framework, of of incentives. I'm a big believer that incentives are part of the way that we communicate, right? Um, Cultural framework, incentives, accountability. Um, but here's some of the things that come up. Like, um, if I'm going to lead somebody, I want to know where they're from,
Hmm.
right? So not like not like tell me your address. Tell me, like, where'd you grow up? What was that like? Um,
How do
you
you
know,
create space for that? Like make that practical for me. So like
yeah,
go
yeah.
to the non-scale spot, but talk to the
So
leader who's like, I've got 3 employees. Okay, great, Blair. I want to know where they're
yeah.
from. Like
So
do you take them to
I did
lunch? Like how do you
I
do
did like
this?
I'll do like a 3 month or a 6 month review with someone,
Okay.
and I'll I'll give them these prompts and say, I just want you, I want you to put together a PowerPoint. Um, One, I want you to watch this video about how to put together a great PowerPoint, you know, and I want you to spend some time working on it. But the PowerPoint, the goal of the PowerPoint is to tell me about where you're from, how you got here,
Hmm.
who are the people in your life that shape you for better and for worse, and um, what was, what are some of the achievements and obstacles you've overcome to get to this point, and then what's the dream? Tell me
Hmm.
where do you want to go in life? Um, and it ideally has nothing to do with their job. Like it's not the goal is not for them to give you something compelling that says like, and here's how 10 years from now I'll help, Humphreys Capital hit their fourth quarter numbers.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is I can do the work of figuring out how to integrate that. Um, I can also do the work though of sometimes saying like, hey, that's really cool. I think if we work really hard for 3 years here, then we're gonna figure out a way to either get you a promotion in the building or get you a promotion outside the building. We don't even care which one it is. So you're going to be better off either way. And if we develop a culture for being a place that gets people promotions here or elsewhere, we're going to be fine too. So that process, I played that out a half dozen times, but it's really really helpful. You really start to see people, start to see them for the person, and it's worked. So um,
You're asking them to be incredibly vulnerable with that, which by the way, I encourage like fantastic culture building. I
yeah,
think that's a way to know, because if you don't know the human, I believe everybody's made in the image of God, the Imago Dei. So like if they are made in the image of God, being a student of them, I do think matters, because I think that's even how we can know God more, looking at his creation, knowing his creation. How do you steward that though? Because I mean, you are asking them, because while it might be, maybe it is normal for your
yeah,
employees, but I'm
yeah.
just saying that isn't a normal workplace
Well,
culture
it's the truth
for
is
a boss to show up and
it was probably
ask.
more normal, it's more normal with a smaller team. It gets less and less normal as you grow out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think, you know, I think you got to reciprocate it.
Ah,
So, uh,
yep. Uh-huh.
um, so, that piece, um, yeah, maybe some people have that innately. For me, I've grown that muscle through combinations of leadership training and, you know, as mentioned, 12 step and counseling and uh,
All the things.
the
Me
school
too.
of hard knocks, right? So,
Yeah, me too.
uh, yeah, so I think that's part of it. I think as you reciprocated, I think that helps.
Do you go
I,
first? Do you go first in it,
um,
or do you?
you know, yeah, not in a formal way, but
Yeah.
I'm happy to tell anyone kind of
Mm,
some of the
mm.
highlights and lowlights of my story. yeah, I think the other piece is, I, truth is, yeah, once somebody entrusts you with something, you do feel that weight, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, most people, most people have, frankly, Clay, I don't even get how most people do it without faith. Like, if somebody comes to me and they start laying out their problems, and in the process, they kind of make it clear that like maybe they grew up in the church or whatever, but like that means nothing to them. I'm like, so what do you do then? Like, like how do you even like get out of bed in the morning? Because I don't know that I could.
Yeah.
Um, but people are incredibly, I think, brave in just the way that they like pull their boots on and go to work.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think part of part of that comment of saying like, I'm a Jesus guy, it's like it's not needing a convert. It's wanting to open up a potential channel where somebody actually gets this gift where they get to set their burdens down.
Yeah.
Because I really I feel for people that just continue to just grind through life without that.
Because the grind is there no matter what, right? There's a yoke no matter what
Oh,
on
it's
earth.
yeah,
We're talking about a business,
life's
like we're
hard.
good.
Yeah,
Right. That's the thing. And because I'm with you, it's just like what can alleviate that? What can give us peace while we carry the yoke? And of course his yoke is light. And I think but it's a yoke. I mean, which is work, which is everything you're talking about, like the
yeah,
profit aspect of the business, the fact that we've got to have clear expectations. We've got to perform. We're going to grow, but how do we care about ourselves? How do we care about that came off very selfish sounding? How do we care about the humanity of people
yeah,
and ourselves? And how do we do those things in balance and do them well? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So getting to know somebody where they're at on their journey is part of that. I think um, giving them certainly training and support, but also like challenge, giving them challenge
mm,
that feels relevant. Figuring
yep,
out a way to connect their job to something that aligns with what they view as a purposeful work,
it's good.
I think is something that's way easier said than done. That can be easy in some roles and more difficult in others. And then one of the things that's cool about Humphreys Capital is that every single employee, and this is not something I put together, it's something my dad really set in motion, that every single employee that's been here for at least a year is an owner.
Mm,
And so um, now that, you know, that looks different and there's all kinds of systems for what job and
uh-huh.
what pay and how much you get and all this stuff like that. And we spend a lot of time and effort to make all of that make sense. Um, but what's cool is at the end of the year, we get to celebrate together
Yeah,
because people participate. So
yeah. Ooh, those are creative, very creative ways to do it. Very cool. We could probably spend the whole episode trying to unpack and learn about that practical
oh,
aspects.
dude, yeah,
Legit.
no doubt. By the way, I'll tell you just, and we can circle on to anything. I think that so we could get into this whole deal on capitalism, and capitalism is a, a, a beautiful thing, in my opinion, but it's not an absolute thing. So it's a beautiful thing. It's it's uh it's beautiful when it's healthy, right? And I think that the 21st century, one of the biggest opportunities for us to advance is in innovating along the lines of alignment. So
Mm,
um, alignment and structure, alignment and with investors, alignment with employees, alignment with partners. Um, I think it's something that we've only scratched the surface in terms of what truly makes sense and what allows people to share in the risk and reward of any endeavor. So
give me the why. I'm received. I hear you. Give me the
yeah,
why.
yeah.
Give me the
The
why that
why is
matters.
because what the why is. Well, I'll start by just saying how unaligned or misaligned so much of um, our marketplace is today. So, like absurdly, everything from executive comp and public companies to the typical general partner, limited partner uh, incentive structure to uh, the typical fee of a wealth manager. I got so many friends that are wealth managers, so I love you guys. But we all know what we're talking about. I'm somewhat in the same game myself. We just worked on resetting our fee structure in a way that we thought made a lot more sense and is more appropriate than what the industry standard is in our space. And it's a big deal because so much of the way the world works today is the incentives pull somebody in a direction that is not in service to the people that they're partnered with or that are invested with them. So, yeah.
Okay, let's make a.
We could go if we want to keep offending people. Not that you are, but I will. Like realtors. Like I mean,
Listen, I'm trying to sell a building right now, and
yeah.
I'm selling it
No,
myself. So I got all these buyers with
no, but I
like,
mean, like, so
I'm just saying, trust me, I get this game right now.
yeah,
You can go
yeah,
at it. You can go at it.
yeah. So, like, I mean, there's just there's a need for us to make it to where, um, when we engage into some type of contract or partnership, that the mechanisms do a better job of promoting our shared interest, without the sense of tension in it. And I think too many of kind of the standard ways that we do things, really don't promote that shared interest. You're really still having to just like trust, like, I hope I hired the right person on this because I don't want them to job me in this way or that way. And maybe that's okay. I think reputations are worth something, but I think the incentive structures could be better. So.
Okay, I want to stay here for one more second, and I want to push you again. I'm going to push again, but why? Why does that matter? Like, okay, so why do we need to create? Because you're not a socialist, and I'm not. Well, maybe I shouldn't say you aren't. You said capitalism
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
beautiful earlier, so
No,
I'm going to
yeah,
assume.
yeah,
Okay, but I'm just getting
yeah,
towards like,
yeah,
so why does alignment matter? Like, I hear you, and for the record, I actually agree with everything you're saying.
yeah.
But like, because we need to make more people money, because we need to include more people in it. Like, what's the root? Like, why does it matter?
I think at the end of the day, it matters. It's really life giving, um, for people to experience a harvest together and to get to
mm,
experience that in a way where um, we've diminished opportunities for conflict, diminished
mm.
opportunities for envy. Um, Truth is, I still struggle with the paradox of the field workers and the wages, right?
Come on.
Um, like, why was, you know, why is God saying it's okay to give the same to people despite different output?
I was
I don't,
here all day and I worked all day.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if I get that one. So there's that piece too. I mean,
Mm,
there's still mystery around it.
yeah.
We know that the attainment of the perfect model will never quite get there,
Come on.
but I still think that there's something to be said for what it feels like. There's probably no greater sense of reward, um, than a true shared win.
Yeah.
And in sports, teams get to experience that all the time. Um,
It's a pretty clear system, win, lose,
yeah,
team over self. Like it's
especially at
clear
the
and
amateur
short.
level, right?
Yeah. Yes.
How
Yeah.
cool is it? Everyone gets the same medal. Everyone gets to hoist the same trophy together. It's just a win.
Yeah.
But I think that in business and in life,
Yeah.
things get way murkier. There's times where, like, man, I'm not even sure that guy won on behalf of the team, and yet he still seemed to like
Yeah.
do pretty well for himself.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think alignment's a big deal, and I think the reality is that we could do a lot better job with it than we're doing.
Mm.
But it requires to shake some things up.
Life giving to harvest together. I wrote it down right off the bat when you said that, man. That's a beautiful why for me.
Wow, that does sound pretty socialist,
Yeah.
though, doesn't it? So,
No,
truth is,
no.
I'll tell you, I'm absolutely, a free market capitalist, um, at kind of a federal level, and believe in small government. And then the closer you get to my house, the more socialist I am. And by the
Mm,
time by the time you get inside my walls, it's some form of uh, benevolent shared dictatorship with me and my wife, and socialist between the siblings. So I don't know. So
The paradox of holding all of
yeah,
it together. Yeah. Okay. So we've got a little window left, and I want to talk about one more subject. Um, so you've talked about, multiple times you've referenced your dad. You've talked about your brother. My quick plug: your brother was a guest on episode 2. So, listeners, if you haven't listened to Grant's episode, and you want to know like the genesis of the famed Santa Monica Pier Ferris wheel that we have in Wheeler here in Oklahoma City on the river, you can learn that story. You can find out some more about it in Grant's episode 2. So go back. But so you've talked about family, to full stories. Blair's grandfather and my grandfather. Like if we go back generations and talk about
yeah,
legacy, we talk about faith, we talk about setting a plate. That's our families have been intertwined generationally going back. And you and I are the
yeah,
same
for
age,
sure.
and so we kind of collide at the same point. What have you learned from the patriarchs in your family? Like um let me rephrase it. What is an important thing that you have learned from the patriarchs before you and your family?
Yeah, yeah, so much. I mean, in a way, so from a family with some strong male leaders and strong male personalities. Um, I was hanging out with my dad last week, and we actually went up and got some charcoal oven burgers together, which felt like old times. And my mom was with us, and I just told him, I said, Dad, I just want you to know you were an amazing dad, and you are an amazing dad. And um, you know, Dad was demanding in his own way. He was tough, as he puts it. He ran a tight ship growing up. Um, but what made him an amazing dad? Like, you know, he never struggled to say "I love you." He'd say it all
Mm,
the time.
mm,
So that was, I don't know if that was easy for him, but he made it look like something that just flowed out of him.
come on.
Um, Similarly, he was always proud of us, and he made that really explicit, really clear. Dad has been incredibly generous to us.
Mm,
Um, some of that's financial, in terms of just the way that he like set us up for life and business. But a lot of it's been that he oriented his business and his effort and his focus, um, towards preparing, and really platforming the next generation.
mm,
And so he didn't just, you know, in fact, he he took extra effort to make sure he didn't just like hand us a blank check. That was never the goal. Um, but it was always about preparing. I mean, I remember at the age of 14 going to my first board meeting and being like, you know, this is what you need to know, and these are the things, and and even in our
Oh, that's
adult
cool.
years, you know, one of the things my dad did that's really interesting is, and I think that's really conspicuous and different, is that he's he was looking through, and originally he was thinking, I'm going to do well in business, and I'm going to make a bunch of money, and then I'm going to give it all away. And I'm going to let my kids go work it out for themselves. And as he was as he was studying scripture and as he was praying through it, he came to the conclusion that to give money away to a bunch of nonprofits is is more or less to entrust the stewardship of those funds to
Mm,
other people's sons and daughters, right?
mm,
And he's like, and I realized I don't have any opportunity to prepare them to be stewards, but I have an opportunity to prepare you to be stewards.
mm,
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, yes, in part, entrust us with resources that we get to live on and help with, and ownership and to grow. But he also entrusts us with a lot of resources that are basically fall into this bucket of what I'd call, mandatory giving, right? And his goal, as he stated, was, I'm going to teach you how to be generous stewards.
come on.
Um, and so I think that's such a big lesson. And, it's the difference between giving a man a fish and teaching a man to fish,
Mm.
but it's through the lens of philanthropy and generosity of like, hey, I'm not going to just like, I'm not going to just give a fish to some nonprofit. I'm going to raise up 3 kids and teach them how to continue to fish and give fish, in hopes that we do it for another generation. One thing his kids have done well at is have more children. Between my 2 siblings and I, we have 15 kids, and so there'll be another generation. And I think that's one of the lessons that I'm excited to pass on is this idea of, hey, I want to teach you how to live a generous life, how to live a productive life, how to live a full life, but also how to be generous in that. I think that's a big deal. My grandfather, man, in some ways, my grandfather's more of he's like such a legend in my mind, but he's almost like a superhero that doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, he was so happy and so full and so loving. He'd plant embarrassingly wet kisses on your face, and he was incredible to be around. My dad reminds me that's not who he grew up with.
Yeah.
But that was the transformed. That's what he called the new Jack. And so that's Jack after experiencing an encounter with Jesus at the 1956 Billy Graham crusade.
That's right, it was.
That changed his life.
That's right.
Right. And so,
yep.
But that was my Poppy. My grandmother, I'll tell you, Poppy, because of his huge personality, got 90% of the limelight. My grandmother, Bonnie Humphreys, was an incredible woman. And not just she was not just like a homemaker. I mean, she was a shrewd businesswoman. She was a wise woman. She was funny. And so when Maggie and I had our first son, we named him Bon after Bonnie. And so she was a big and huge part of my life and had a huge impact on it. So,
I mean, as you're describing your grandfather, Jack, I mean, it's the maturation and evolution. It's the same process that Jesus took him on that you were talking about at the beginning of the story.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, in your own way and in his own story, I mean, it's the same process that God was present for and intentional in the whole time.
Yeah. What a grace that we,
come on.
For those of us that have had, have had a mixed track record, it's a grace that we get more time, right? Because most people, by the time my grandfather died, he was known as like, people talking about him as this, man of God and all this stuff like that, right? Like, and he was, but he wasn't always.
Right.
He got there, right?
Right.
So, I think we can all hope that we have the time and the opportunity where God can work in us and get us to that point. So,
and then I love the way you shared about Kirk, about your dad, and how he didn't just use. So specifically talking to our leaders who have businesses, right? Like thinking of them, it wasn't just the resources, like you said, of the business. It wasn't just that aspect of it, but it was the business itself was a vessel. It was a tool that he was able to use, that God, as he was staying connected to the vine, following God the best he could, began to see how he could use those tools, those businesses as a way to equip you guys, to train you, not just take the resources from them and give them as blessing and legacy, but to actually use them to help shape, right? And allow you to
Hey, I'll throw in one more thing on that.
Yeah.
This is something I'm big on.
Yeah.
If our employees, our teams are an opportunity to be generous. We can put on our generosity hat when we're dealing with our team. And one of I think the things that's migrated from the way that I understood business growing up to the way that we practice it today is that it used to be 2 different hats. I'm going to go put my business hat on, which means slashing cost. I'm cutting expenses.
Yeah.
It's time to downsize and shrink the team. And then we're going to go to the banquet and be generous. 1, banquets suck, so nobody wants to go to a banquet anyway. But 2, we don't have to measure all success in profit. We can measure it in growth and enrichment
Yes.
of people that we love,
Yeah.
and those can be people on our team. And so I think if you open yourself up to realizing that it's still winning, if you're providing for people and providing opportunity, whether that's through you know an expense item on personnel, or whether that's through um, philanthropy, then you have a lot more freedom to just be consistent as a person that loves well. So
Good close. Add nothing to that. Well done. That's good stuff. That's good stuff, Blair. Thank you.
cool.
And
I'm sure I will get blackmailed on that for some type of raise or bonus at some point, but
well, we'll see if anybody's listening.
um,
We'll see if anybody's listening to the
yeah,
podcast.
that's right.
We'll
Yeah,
see if they pay attention or not.
yeah. If we sit down at the annual review and they pull out the
They're like, so
podcast,
you
and I'm gonna
sat
be
down with
like, all
Clay,
right,
and
here
you're
we
gonna be like,
go.
oh, okay, all right, good to know. Well, we did talk about
No,
it's a balance, right? It's not that profits and the
yeah,
function of the business don't matter, but
it's a
it's a
balance.
balance. But it's just
Yeah, it's a balance. I look for those are conversations you have, and
yes,
anyway, it'll go all right.
yeah.
So, hey, this has been fun. Thanks so much.
Thank you, man.
Yeah,
We have started since we did the rebrand. We've started closing each with a verse that kind of framed it for me in prep and prayer. And so I'm gonna read that real quick and then we'll close out. But man, thank you, thanks Blair, thanks for sharing, thanks for being courageously authentic. Like even sharing some of your own story, some of the family story, how you're functioning in your business, and how it integrates together for you. Thanks, B.
yeah, man. Enjoyed it.
Okay, so Psalm 78, we're going to have a psalm because if the journey is about not arriving and is about crying out the whole way and needing God the whole way, the Psalms can be good. Psalm 78, 1-7. My people hear my teaching. Listen to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth with a parable. I will utter hidden things, things from old, things we have heard and known, things our ancestors have told us. We will not hide them from our descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power, and the wonders that he has done. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. And then they would put their trust in God and would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands. Blair, man, thanks for joining me. To all of our listeners and viewers, thanks for joining us today. We look forward to being together soon. And until next time. Thanks for tuning into our show. If you want to learn more about how you can integrate your faith into your business, download our integrated business guide for free by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.